Hello everyone, it's me Evan, and welcome back to the channel. So today, I'm going to be kind of walking you guys through the BrickRigs editor in case you're new to BrickRigs and would like to build something. When I first joined BrickRigs, I found the editor to be extremely intimidating, just because I was not at all familiar with anything in its systems. But now that I've got a bit of experience under my belt, I think I feel ready to share my knowledge with you guys and hopefully make some builders out of you. Because the more people who build in this game, the better it is, honestly. Whenever I see someone who's built their own thing, it's always extremely awesome to see people being creative and having their own ideas and not just downloading things from the workshop. Although I appreciate people downloading my things, I feel like that should not be all that happens in BrickRigs, where like 5 people make all the vehicles and the content, and then everyone else just sort of borrows from them. I think that it'd be a much better game if more people just sort of, built their own stuff. So, in my efforts to make that a thing that happens, we have this video and this tutorial. So, first off, you're going to want to look over here. Now you can see we've got a huge bank of bricks, all different kinds. They'll usually, you can read the dimensions of them. It's pretty self-explanatory. You click on a folder, and you can see all the things in it. Now, what these individual pieces do, some of them have functions. For instance, fuel will explode when hit with things, and it will also, it is fuel for your turbines, your engines, and your thrusters. So, yeah, different bricks have different function. Now, let's say we have a gun here. You can see we can put in an action for that. We got this big menu of actions, and these are the kind of things you can set up in your controls tab. So, for instance, action 1, that's usually your left mouse button. That'll be the default that guns are set to, for instance. Now, onto movement in the editor, because it's not immediately apparent how the movement works. So you want to hold down your right click, and then you can use WAS and D as well as Q and E. So W moves forward, S moves back, A to the side, D to the side, Q down, E up. It's very simple. I hardly ever use Q and E, but they exist, and so that's a thing. Alright, now let's move on to something we can mess around with a little bit. So, you can see up here we've got a lot of these little tabs, and it will tell you what they do. You can click them, and then it will also, if you hover over, you'll see that it will show a key binding that is bound to that. So if I click here, notice that delete here, it says you hit the delete key. So if I hit delete, that block disappears. If I want to go here, you can see I could either hit that to duplicate, or I could use just the key binding C to duplicate it. As for how bricks are moved, it's basically mouse movement, and then if you hold shift, that allows you to change the height of the brick. Now, as for visibility, the hiding feature is actually very useful. So let's say I want to get to the engine. Here, I can just click, and then I can hit hide section, or, yeah, so I can just sort of hide these bricks. Now, they're not being deleted, mind you. They're still there. You just can't see them, so you can get to bricks beneath them. To unhide the bricks, it's just Alt-H, and you can see that up here, Alt-H. I don't know why X-ray is the way that it is, but it basically just gives all your blocks a little black line at the edges of them. It does help to differentiate blocks on like a roof, for instance, here that's very flat. You wouldn't see the difference between these blocks without that. So it's kind of helpful for that. It also allows you to see sensors input, but like through things. So if we look, let's find a gun. Is that? No, it's not. The hide feature's coming in clutch. Okay, so there's a gun, right? And then I have sensors that fire this gun. And you can't see them, but if you hit X and then you hover over the input, you can see that little red spot that shows up down there, right in here. Oh, that's where that sensor is. So that helps you find things a little bit better. If we go into selection, you can see we've got invert selection, which basically, like, if I select just the antenna over here, right, and then I hit I, it selects everything except for the antenna. If you want to select multiple blocks, you can hold down Shift as you click, and you can select a few, like that. And you can see we can just grab as many as we want, like this. If we move down, you can see there are two different kinds of select connected. You could just hit L, which selects everything that is connected, of course. Or you could hit Shift L, which only selects the bricks that are directly connected. So if we look, let's say here at the barrel, right? So you can see the bricks connected here are these barrel pieces and this barrel piece. And if I hit Shift L, you can see that's all we select, like that. And of course, you can do that. So like, let's say, let's grab a plane, right? Now, if I want to select everything except for these two landing gear, I could Shift L up through until I get to that, and then I could hide that, or I could also do this. So you select all that, right, and then you hit I, and now everything else is selected. This is useful for like painting things and selecting different materials. But let's get back to our tank example here as we go through. So we've also got select all the same material. So this is steel. If we select all the same material, you can see we basically can just pull the skin right off this tank because the insides are tungsten. But yeah, you can also use this to, oops, you can also use this to, for instance, if you like select all the same material with M, and then you can hide it, you can see, you know, like what your vehicle's made out of. It's very fun to do with planes, because with planes, a lot of the time you've got like a lot of material that isn't the main frame of it. So if I hide the wood and I hide the plastic, you can see the aluminum frame of this plane, right? That's pretty cool. So the hide feature and the material selection feature are very useful for seeing like the rigid structures inside of a vehicle or something like that. It's very, very useful. All these tools are very, very well thought out, and I'm very glad that all of them are here. Alright, so next down on the list here, select all the same type. So if we want to select, let's say, all of this kind of wing piece, I don't use this very often, to be honest, but it's B. So you can see these are all that kind of wing piece. If we select all these barrels, you can see that. If we select all these wheels, you can see there. It is very useful for selecting wheels. Moving on, so that one's pretty self-explanatory. Toggling selection just means, like, you know, you could select a bunch of stuff and then just hit A and it just unselects them. It's also pretty easy to cancel it because you can just click away and it will just make the selection disappear. and then select all the same paint. So this is useful if you want to try to change something's color. So if we select the paint here, you can see we can change this to magenta or whatever color we want, really. But yeah, so that's the selection area. Miscellaneous. Toggle lights will basically just show you where the lights are. That's for my little night vision system there. Focus on a selected brick. Not very useful, but it's there in case you need it. And then, of course, you can take a thumbnail, right, and then that will show up. So if I take a side thumbnail, right, then I look, it shows up like that in your little build area. And then, of course, history, redo, undo. Yeah. Freaking pink tank. Anyway, yeah, so those are all the tools up here, which are all very good. I think next we should probably just cover this area over here, which is usually empty if it's just normal blocks, but if you've got anything that can be given an input, for instance, this actuator here, you can see it gives us a input channel, which is basically what controls you want to use to make it work, and then we get the actual parameters for the actuator. So this can depress 12 degrees and raise 60 degrees. Because this actuator is facing backwards, that means that our max angle here is our gun depression, whereas the minimum angle is actually our gun elevation. And then to have that be going at the right speed and in the right direction, we have it at negative 0.1 to give us that elevation. So these are the kind of parameters you can set for every block that has, them available. If we hide some blocks here, oops, to get to the engine. Let me try that again. I accidentally hid the engine. So you can see we've got tank drive, just because that we're, it's a tank, so we need the tank drive. And then we got throttle input. Right, so, and our fuel, of course, all kinds of stuff. So most blocks have this, the most complicated of which are, of course, the sensors. Sensors, you can have a different set of selections here. There's quite a few. And they all do different things. I can't exactly explain all of them, but I'll do a really cursory go through. So speed is the actual speed of the brick. Acceleration is your change in speed. Distance is the distance from spawn. Time is the time since activated. Proximity is the the space before it hits something. It basically shoots out an invisible ray that detects things. And in fact, most of these are actually just explained for you. So distance to ground is the distance to the next vertical surface below you. Altitude, pitch, They're very, very effective if you know how to use them. And I can't explain them, to be honest, because I just sort of wing it until it works, and then I'm confused and I don't know what I actually did to make it work. But the main thing is that just building the vehicle. The sensors and stuff, you can probably find someone to help you figure that out. And I can probably help in some cases. So this has just sort of been like a pretty brief and pretty casual tutorial of how to use the editor. There's a whole lot more that I'm not really explaining very well. Of course, you've got your saving features. I should probably go over this before we wrap up here. Opening an existing vehicle opens up all of your vehicles that you have or that you may have downloaded from the workshop. I have a couple ones that I've downloaded from the workshop, mostly for testing purposes or comparisons to my own stuff. Just because you gotta see what's out there if you want to fight it. Merging vehicles is actually very cool too. So let's say I wanted to grab something from another vehicle that I made, or I have an idea. I'll put this. So I'll import this, right? And you can see that the entire build is selected. you can import anything, any other vehicle. I could import a battleship into this one if I wanted to. But then you can basically just, remove all the other blocks, and you've got whatever piece you wanted from that other piece you were bringing in. Let's say it was this machine gun here. You can do that. That's very useful. And of course, saving the current vehicle, and then of course you can save it as a new file, which means that it'll save it independently, which is good for variants. So for instance, the garter here, oops, I just made an oopsie. So we'll take this as a learning opportunity. So I just saved that this tank. I just saved it to this file because I wasn't being careful, because I used the save current as new file. And when you do that, you can save any vehicle and it would overwrite it. So you want to be careful about that, because I just overwrote this this jet fighter. Now I feel extremely dumb. Oops. As you can see, though, I could probably just... you know what? I'll show you guys what I'm going to do. So I'm going to open this, and this is clearly not the JFM7 garter. What I can do is I can delete that, and I can actually bring in a copy of it that's got different equipment on it. So this guided missile variant, we'll plop that down there, and then we can delete the missiles off of it. And Alt-I, and delete. You can see now we've fixed it. I guess we should probably also, there we go, change up the little panel back here. Alright, so as I was saying before that little oopsie, you can see you can save different variants of an aircraft with different files. So for instance, this thing has 4 versions, and they've all got different wing-loaded equipment and ordnance. So like you've got this Mimi shotgun thing, right? And it just sort of spits. Oops, no, that just lets them all go. Well, anyway, you get the idea. It allows you to save different variants and or overwrite older designs if you want to. I tend to do that a lot by accident, so I would watch out on that one. Saving things in multiplayer can also be a bit weird, because sometimes it won't let you just use the save changes button, so you have to save the vehicle to itself or else it won't work. But other than that, this stuff's pretty simple. And then of course uploading, like I'm going to do with this little guy soon. Soon enough, this one will be uploaded to the workshop, and well, at least at the time of recording. By the time this is out, it'll definitely be on the workshop, because I'm going to do it in the next couple minutes. But yeah, so this is probably a less than brief video at this point, but I just thought you guys should probably know some of the editor things you can do. Most of it just gets explained, to be honest. You just gotta move your mouse around, it'll tell you. It'll tell you all the key bindings and everything about it. So for the most part, you can just read, and if you can read, then you can build something. But a lot of people just don't know where to look. Like, they don't see these buttons up here and they never use them. And that was me for a while too. Like, I was like, oh, that's big words, no thank you. And so I built some pretty garbage things without knowing about like the mirroring tool, or also, like, I didn't even know that you could center your build. So you just take a brick that's like central on the build, like the chair for instance, you hit L to select everything, hit G, now you're moving the whole thing, right? And then you hit Z, oops, you hit Z, and it just plops it right in the middle, perfectly centered, which means that your mirror tool will make everything perfectly symmetrical. It's things like that that I just didn't know when I was starting out, and so I hope I have helped you guys, and I'm not currently overstaying my welcome. All right, bye.